Our first speaker, Mr. Sjoerd Soeters, is one of the most recognizable, independent and charismatic Dutch architects. His architecture is often denied by the purists, but on the contrary, it is also loved by the users. His style is sometimes described as unmodern because he rejects the formal purism of modern architecture. However, he cannot be called a conservative architect because his projects are extremely innovative in terms of structure and typology. However, the main idea of his architecture is the search of beauty in urban space. And his artistic credo is, as he called his architectural practice, pleasant places and happy people. Mr. Sjoerd Soeters, I'm giving you the floor.
Thank you very much for this flattering introduction, and thank you also for inviting me for such a select audience of theoreticians and academia. I'm not an academic myself, I have to be honest. I'm a simple architect, and I use some of the theories and I combine them to give my work a certain ground. Because if you read all the books about planning, architecture, typology, you realize that many architects don't read. And I like to read them and give them an interpretation and combine different theories so that I have a point of departure for the work. Please, the next. I was asked to do a speech on housing, and I wanted to show you 3 projects which I did in a sequence after Java Island, or with Java Island. Java Island, and after Java Island I was commissioned in Copenhagen to do Sluizenholmen, and from that I got a job to do 2,500 apartments in Diemen, which is on the border of Amsterdam. These are 3 courses of a meal, and a meal needs a dessert. So as a dessert we will run through Haverlei, which is low density. The other projects are quite high density. Java Island is 100 apartments per hectare. Sluizenholmen is slightly more dense, and I think that even Diemen is more dense than Sluizenholmen. Okay, let's start. To start with a slight theoretical part for the academicians, I want to show you, these 2 images. They are in a book, Collage City by Colin Rowe, maybe you know it. And the scale of these 2 images is the same. To the left you see a modern urban plan by Le Corbusier after the Second World War, and at the right you see the traditional city of Parma. And if you look at them, they are like positive and negative. At the left you see more white, at the right you see more black. That means that at the left there is more open space between buildings, at the right the buildings are including space. So at the left space is space, at the right space is room, the room of the public area. And what's interesting here is that the total area is exactly the same. The open space is double in Saint-Dié. The built area is 5 or 4 times in Parma. And the percentage is 12 versus 50%. And what is more important is the length of the facade. Look at that. The facade length is 4 times more at the right picture. That means that the surface of contact between buildings, inhabited buildings, and the public street or the piazza is more intense. Buildings at the left are high, buildings at the right are moderate of height. So this contact is important. If you combine these images, next, with a theory of a German person who looked for at what distance we can see what, and that comes close to Jan Gehl. He says that at 20 or 25 meters we can see the width of a nose bone, and a nose bone is a very elemental thing to recognize a face at 20 meters. Jane Jacobs said that security, safety on the public ground is partly based on eyes on the street. That was her theme. And if you combine these two theories and you draw this line of 20 or 25 meters around the buildings in the left image and around the buildings at the right image, you see that the whole pink area at the left picture is in fact unsafe by the law of Jane Jacobs. And the right, only the most public places in the center of Parma are public and safe, but since there are so many people walking there, they are all right. Because of this, in fact, modern planning has failed over the last century. And it is important to acknowledge that and never to start and try it again. Never do it again. Cross it out. Let's try to make high density, not by making high buildings and leave a lot of green area around it, but let's try to make high density by middle height buildings, maybe 5, 4, 6 stories high, some towers, 15 floors, and that's it. And in that way you can create areas that are safe, that are pleasant to be, where children can play in safety and so on. Next. Okay, this is Java, how I found Java in the beginning of the 90s. The island is 140 meters wide, and it's a kilometer from the one knik to the other, so a kilometer long. It's a built island, built on piles in the river north of Amsterdam. This island is built for transport reasons. You see the cranes on the quay, and the quays are 40 meters wide and constructed, and inside you can build by piling deep, piling maybe 30 meters deep, and then you build. Next. There was a competition, and the planners had made what we call a program for this island. The program was 100 per hectare, and their idea was quite simple. You come here by tram, and this is where the tram ends, and where the tram ends is part of Amsterdam Center. If you enter here by car or by tram, you look back at the city here, and therefore they had invented a diaphragma, and the cars go like that, and then they turn to the North Quay, and then they go over the other bridge back to the city, and vice versa. And what they thought was, well, we leave an existing building here, we guide this line of sight by making these buildings here, 3 little towers, a block square, some courtyards, and then 4 towers here, 10 towers there, a very special triangular tower here. Okay. And we said, why would you do such a thing? You could do this anywhere in the world. I mean, it's not specific for Amsterdam. So we were looking at that moment for a relation with the old city, because we realized that the old city has not only a very attractive place to live, but because of that, it has also economic value, enormous economic value. And every new suburb that you buy has half of the economic value of the city of Amsterdam. So why wouldn't we try to take the DNA of Amsterdam Center and put it over to Java Island. But first, we have to think about the landscape. This landscape is completely flat because it's artificial, it's built 2 meters above a controlled level of water, the IJ. And if you're standing on this landscape, you see the water, but the water in fact is an abstraction. I said, you cannot imagine that you feed the ducks here. Because the water, I know the water is 2 meters below, but if you would explain to me that it's 4 meters, I would believe it equally if I stand here. So I said to the planners, we want to do something with the landscape. And therefore I found an interesting book by Tadehiko Higuchi, a Japanese landscape architect, who wrote a book, Space and Structure in Landscapes, MIT publication. And he starts with the scheme of Henry Dreyfus, and Henry Dreyfus says, if you're in a flat landscape, you look at the horizon, that is 0, and you have a standard, a normal line of sight standing of 10 degrees. And this 10 degrees line is in fact the line that you use to measure space, to measure distance. Next. And Higuchi says, where this line hits the earth is in fact discriminative about what is nearby and what is further away. So this measuring instrument says, okay, this 10 meters, because it's about 10 meters, this is nearby and further than 10 meters is away. But if you are in a concave landscape, you miss the horizon, and so you miss your measuring instrument. And so in Japan you see pictures of people looking down at the bay, and there's a village and you could pick it up with your hand because you miss the knowledge of what distance. And also when you're in a mountainous landscape, you don't know how far a mountain is from the point where you stand. Next. And if you stand on the corner of a cliff, only the cliffside is nearby and the water down is far away. So I thought, this is the essence of my experience on the quay of Java Island. And then we do the next. Oh no, okay. Then we transposed this idea of Higuchi to the center of Amsterdam. I had lived there for 20 years already, but I never realized that except having canals, having quays, having houses standing on the quays looking on the canal, we have also bridges. And these bridges in Amsterdam center make, in fact, a kind of undulating landscape of the city center. And you have different positions of the eye in this landscape. Sometimes you're on top of a bridge, you overlook the water, you overlook the landscape. And sometimes you're in between these bridges in a kind of valley. And we said this is essential because if we can undulate the landscape of Java Island, we need to make bridges. And if we want bridges, we want to have water, because otherwise we won't get them. So we cut the island in 5 pieces by introducing canals. That was a very important first step. And then what we did, we said, okay, of course you want to have most of the housing overlooking the water. Be it north, be it south, it is attractive. And if you want to do that, it is efficient to make, to cut the length of these buildings, 1 kilometer long, in pieces of 27 meters, 5 bays of 5 meter 40. And the middle bay of this system is in fact getting the elevator and the staircase. And in this endless repetition of a structure, you could vary the program. You can fill it in with 30 small houses for young people, but you could equally have 12 houses for rich elderly or for rich people. So this structure and the idea of using the same structure endlessly is based on theory by John Habrake that you might know, who has written books on how repetitive structure with a different infill can help us solve the problem of housing. So this theory of John Habrake, he's my professor in Eindhoven, and next Sunday he gives a birthday party because he becomes 90 years old, so I'm going to visit him. John Habrake was the basis of this. And then what we did is we realized that we... Do the next. Okay, this is a very primitive drawing where you see the footprint of these 27 meters wide houses that stand on the quays, and the housing lines crossing, joining the front of the little canals. Next. This is a primitive image as well. Next. And then we realized that the primary living functions in all these houses will turn to the view over the big water. So that means that the courtyards in between will be without eyes on the street. And the courtyards we would like to have without cars. The cars are under the structure here. And the structure is lifted so that the earth here is put in the courtyard. So this is the key, this is the courtyard. And we introduced back houses 4 floors high, which contain living room areas and control the courtyards, so that the courtyards where the children are playing without traffic can be safe during the time that people are there. Next. So then you get this section. This is a long section, and then you see that, in fact, so this is the structure of endless 27 meters, or 5.40 meter bays. These are the back houses. Here we have canal houses, a smaller typology, 4.5 meters wide. And at the back at these canal houses we have what we call palazzi, and the palazzi look also to the central courtyard. So from here, from there, from there, from there, from there, from there, there's control over these interior spaces, and the bicycle path goes like this over the whole length, and there sometimes is also a connection here. Next. And this ended, the next trick when we had invented this structure is that we appointed 10 big architects to do the big houses here, and 20 young, just started architects to do the canal houses. And Dick van Gameren was one of them. He made his first project in Java Island. So I hope he will show it, but I don't know if he has time. Okay, you see here next. And you see these bays of 540, and the garages, the parking runs from canal to canal. Next. You see here the canal houses. For these architects, I had a kind of architectural guidelines, very simple. I think it were 2 A4 sheets with text and illustrations, and further nothing. And of course, the young architects had some liberty, needed some more liberty. They wanted to become famous soon, so they needed to do some extravagant architecture. I let them do it. Here you see the effect of the back houses. And apart from that they overlook the playground, they also hide in a way the bigger structure. This is the north side. The south side is 5-6 floors. The north side is 7-8 floors, sometimes 9 floors, I think. And when you look in the perspective, you see these back houses, and they more or less protect or intermediate between the size of the human and the size of the big buildings. Next. And if you overlook the island like this, you see, in fact, an island that looks like it's there for 100 years. It has a variety, and it's a bit wild, but I can assure you that the people have found there a very happy place. Next. when Java Island was finished, I was telephoned from Copenhagen. In Copenhagen, the Lord Mayor had lost a kind of debate in the last session of the council, where you know how people in Copenhagen are, they drink their first beer at 11 o'clock, and the last day of the council is a council day which starts at 10 o'clock in the morning and ends at 2 or 3 at night. And then most of the council is drunk and in the bar, but there were a few diehards who pressed on the Lord Mayor that he should make a plan for the whole coastline of Copenhagen, which was quite impossible. And my client was an official directly under the Lord Mayor. So he got the commission to set up a committee to go and have a look in all the harbor fronts in Europe and then choose what he liked best, and that would be the commission. So I was telephoned, I was busy, I said, I don't come to Copenhagen, I work in Holland, I don't work in Denmark. But after 5 times telephoning, he convinced me that I should come. He said, okay, I come only one evening with the last flight in and the next morning the first flight out. And I found a man in a raincoat with the collar up, and he said, this is a secret project. No one knows about it. And we will make a plan, you will make a plan in 3 months, and even the local planners don't know anything about it. I said to him, we would never do that. We consult the people, the local planners, and then we slowly would build the project up. He said, no. It should be finished when the bridge to Sweden is opened. So then we will make a presentation of the plan, and we will have big applause, and we will build it. I didn't believe it, but it went exactly like he said. So the area is similar to Java Island. This is the area, and the area is just like Java Island, separated from the city center by a main road, by a train, by a rail, by a slaughterhouse area, and then by a 19th century ring, and then you're in the city center. So it's a kind of location on itself, but it has enough potential to become an area. This is the area in total. There is a power plant here, which is quite polluting. There is some industry here, quite polluting, and we made a plan for the whole thing. Next. Here you see the area, and exactly like in Amsterdam, the level of the water is about 2 meters lower from all the quays. You see there is a kind of industry, there's silos, there is all kinds of rubbish, and you could clean it up and start anew with housing. Next. There was a debate at that time in Denmark why you would invite a foreigner, a Dutchman, to do a serious plan. And then we found out that in the 17th century the Dutch were very important in planning because of Amsterdam and so on, and so they were invited to do Christianshavn. And in the 18th century the French were more en vogue, and they were invited to do Fredrikstad. And so now I was invited to do this area, and you see the scale of the 3 elements. Next. And the idea was to prevent the new professionals that came to Copenhagen because of new industries, because of the bridge with Sweden. So there was an enormous impulse in the activity to prevent them to buy or rent a house in the suburb and to stand in the same traffic jam that everybody already was in. So the idea was, don't have a house, the left image, don't have a house with a garden and a car in the front. Let's have a house on the water with a little quay or a little landing and a boat. That was and we made a model. We studied the different typologies of Danish and, for instance, Copenhagen planning. And we made a model like that. It was a big model, it was in a big hall, and it was indeed a big exposition. And then the investors came, and then we had to do the next round. Well, next. And when this was the plan that we showed in the exhibition, later we worked further on the plan, and we did this with it. You see, we dug many canals. This is a new canal, 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 and this one, and this is a new canal, and this one. So in fact, we improved the landscape by making more water than ever, so that almost every house had an address and a view over the water. Sometimes big water, sometimes smaller water. And that way, we tried to make a kind of water city out of it. And the first phase is this one in the south. And here you see that I have bent the canal in such a way that the hollow side of the canal is south-facing, and the other side is north. That means that I stand here, I see the whole length of these walls, I see lit, because they're in the sunlight. And the other side is short, because I see only the beginning of the bend, and then it gets out of my sight. And by doing that, I make a very light interior to this canal area. And the other trick I did, I realized that if you make a new area, that these new areas most of the time are quite empty. There are not enough people, and these people are separated in different streets and different quays. And if you could reduce the surface of public ground, the contact, the possibility of meeting and the possibility of contact is bigger and bigger. So what I did, I cut out the street here, the street here, the street here, the street there. And I cut out, in fact, 2 quays here. I made only 1 quay on the sunny side of the street. And this reduction of public space increases the possibility and the chance of meeting other people. So the density of people per square meter increases by doing that. Next. And here you see this effect. So here we have this canal. We have on the north side of the canal, we have the walkway. And here we don't have a walkway. So that means that the blocks are used also as a way to go from there to there. And the blocks are used as an entrance to all these houses, because these houses are standing with their feet in the water. So the courtyards are half public, half private, but they are also a meeting place for people. There's a combination of going through and being there. And of course you see the structure here is more complicated. In Java Island they had a linear structure, it was simple. But here I ordered one architect to do the whole block plan. So where are the elevators, how is the layout of the apartments? And then I had 20 architects per block to do only the facades. And I had very important and famous Danish architects, pure modernists, said, the facade, we are modern architects, we do whole buildings. I said, no, this time you do only the facade. And it was quite a critical moment. I had someone in my office who accompanied me and spoke fluent Danish, and she translated for me what they said to each other. It was almost a revolution. But in the end they did it. Next. And this is the section. In Denmark, you built, in fact, with prefabricated, so they thought it was less comfortable to make the garage under the structure. They wanted to make the garage under the courtyard, so that's what we did. You see the key and the big key here. Next. And so this is a part of, these are the little houses that stand with their feet in the water, access from the back. One gallery, so this is a house in 2 floors, and this is a house in 2 floors. This one has a boat, and this one has a terrace on top. Next. Also there I made very simple architectural guidelines for these pure modernists to say them that each building should have a good foot and a good ending at the top. That the materialization should be quite strong, that the corners where we go from low to high should be addressed, that the public space, the bridges, and that we have functions in the corners where you could have a shop or a restaurant. Next. And then we started to make drawings, and as the primus inter pares, I talked with the architects and they criticized it, and they criticized themselves, and in a process, a quick process, we came to this decision about all the different facades. Next. And this is what it is. And here you see the effect of the neck in the cross canal. Next. And the light in the long canal with the bend, and the bridges that go to the other side where is the shadow. Next. And the openings in the blocks with bridges where you can cross through the courtyard to the other side. Next. The playground. Next. The smallest one, there was a debate, the Danish are very afraid that it will be dark. And I think that the smallest courtyard, which is 43 by 11 meters, and here maybe double, is the best, not too big. Next. A shop or restaurant on the corner, where we have extra height in the ceiling. Next. Cross canal. Next. Different facades in these duplexes. Next. And the Danes they really are Vikings. So in winter they put on their wetsuit, they jump in the canal, they swim to the other side, have a vodka, and then they swim back home. So the mentality is completely different. The Dutch are weak in comparison to the Vikings of Denmark, I can assure you. Next. When Copenhagen was finished, after some time, I was invited by a developer who had bought this whole area where old office buildings standed empty. In the books for German investors for millions and millions, and he bought it, like he said, not for the square meter price, but for the kilo price, but because he would tear everything down. And he wanted to make a plan there, but he hadn't found an architect or a planner, and one of my colleagues said, maybe you should call Sjoerd Soeters, he does things like that, but it's a bit too big for me. So I came to the office of the investor, the developer, and he had hung his full office with images of Sluizenholmen, Copenhagen. And I said to him, that's a miracle. We just finished this. He said, yeah, this is what I want to make. So within a quarter of an hour, I had a fat contract to make a plan. So that's how we started. Next. This is the area, and here you see, here is a train, here is the metro of Amsterdam, and in fact we have two stations, one station here for train and metro, and a second station here for the metro. And the area that we're talking about is this area. So it was very easy to say, well, south is here, so this is east, this is north. So we could make a kind of long line of buildings to separate the noise of the train from the area, and in that way we could build housing, because in Holland we have quite strong norm for separating or for keeping out noise. Next. And the developer, together with the local politicians, had ordered a kind of modern planning office to do a plan. And this was the plan that they made, and I said to them, don't make this too long, because we want to do something completely different. This is traditional modern planning out of the 50s, and I hate it. I will never do this. Next. So we made a plan in which we made a wall, a back wall of 5, 6, 7 floors high to keep out the noise of the metro, to make a rhythm of higher buildings of 15 floors that get a kind of rhythm, and that are at the end of a square, a piazza, that in terms of Camillo Siete is a deep square. A deep square is a square at the end of which you have a tower or a higher building that can come flat in the space. So the room is ending, these deep rooms are ending in little towers. And then you make courtyard, like just in Copenhagen. And these courtyards are not the entrance for everyone, but because you have public space, and the public space at full length is connected with buildings. And here in the middle you make 6 and 2, 8 courtyard blocks with water, like in Denmark, in between. And then you order architects to do 1 block, and then you order 6 architects to do the facades. And that's exactly how we worked here. Next. So this is the image that we made to show the plan to the local politicians. Next. And this one. Cars are under the courtyards and under the buildings. And there are only cars in the street for visitors. And all the inhabitants have their car ratio in the buildings. So it's a very pedestrian area. Next. And the high elements in the plan are here. The rhythm of towers that are at the end of the piazzas. A thing here that has, by the way, changed. A thing here that is the end of the piazza, which is in the center, lifted up and overlooking the park. We move the road, which is now here, to there, so that we have a park belonging to this whole area. Well, this next. And you see that the spaces are moved. This is not a straight line, but this is an undulating line. And also here there's a hollow line, which in fact makes this to a special room. And also here the canals and also the cross canals are at angles or going around, for the same light effect and the same reduction of square meters public space that I used in Copenhagen. Next. And this is the model that we work with at the moment. And all the blocks that you see here are at the moment being built. These are the 2 blocks that we have to start. This is the new landscape plan. But this is all going up, and soon we will destroy also this office building and make the end block here. Next. The blocks are quite complicated, so one architect has to sort out where the bicycle is, and how the apartments are there, how the parking is there, what the relation of the houses with the courtyards is. And here you see images at the right of what you can see now. Next. This is the block, a simple block, and the section in which you see how we solve the parking, how the courtyards are a little bit higher, just like in Denmark, and how, in fact, the variety in elevations is on the block. So every block has each side 6 different architectures. Next. This is how the parking is in it. This is double parking. Next. This is an image of a building by Joop Mollink, a tower, very good tower. I think it's almost finished. Next. And this is the total imagery of how this all looks. The architecture is very simple, on basis of, if you look to Amsterdam, to the famous canal that we have, you see very simple buildings. You have a little staircase, you have a door with a little ornament, you have brickwork, you have wood frame windows, you have a little curl on the top, that's all. So why wouldn't we use that vocabulary to make buildings? Next. 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 Dessert. Okay, for you. In the 90s, I think it was 93, 95, I don't remember exactly, I was invited in Den Bosch as one of the 5 architects to do a proposal after 1 week of thinking for an area of 220 hectares where they were allowed to build 1,000 houses. Well, a phoenix, you know what a phoenix is in Holland. A phoenix is a density of 35, and maybe some very, very intelligent architects can press 50 in it, but phoenix is 35. So here I had a density proposed of 4 or 5 houses per hectare. What do you do with a quarter hectare? If you have a man and a woman and children, and you have 2 jobs, how would you keep up a quarter of a hectare? It's impossible. You need personnel to do it, you need a gardener, you need someone to clip your trees and so on. A quarter of a hectare is a lot of work. So I thought it's nonsense to give everybody a quarter of a hectare. Why don't we make a landscape and compress these 1,000 houses into blocks, small blocks? The landscape is like that. It's worthless. It's in fact agricultural land. No much articulation except for there's a little dike, an old dike here with some green on it, some trees here. This is the dike to the river. The river is the river Maas. Next. And here you see the situation. Here you see an old village that has been expanded with house, garden, backyard, and so on endlessly. And the most horrible thing for me would have been that we continue with that to eat up this whole landscape, because this is the landscape we have, to eat it up and to destroy it like this. I mean, this is what I like. This should be abolished. Next. Oh, yeah. Next. You see the river, and where we are. This is the Maas, and you saw a canal. Can you go back one? So this is a canal, a smaller river which is canalized with a lock in it, and this is the big river. Next. And so I came with a proposal to say, why don't we build castles? Next. What a beauty is a castle. I mean, who doesn't want to live in a castle? You live in a castle in a landscape. You are there, you don't have to keep up the landscape. You overlook the landscape and you sit maybe in your little courtyard, on your little terrace, overlooking it, sipping on your wine and having a relaxed time. My ideal, personally. Next. Examples of castles in Holland and elsewhere. Next. This is a very crude model. Next, fantastic. And that idea was based on the fact that as a young child, I had gone on a trip with the school, the base school, short trousers, a little package of bread and some sweets from your mother. And we went on this river to a castle which is standing further. And then you climb the stairs of the castle and you look through these slits over the river and you think, wow, what a nice high building. Exactly in the bend of the river. That dream had kept me. And that dream was not based on science, of course. But then later, when we did this project, a lady had done some research in the archives in The Hague and came up with this image. And this is exactly this place. This is this small river. This is the main river. This is exactly the site that we have here. And there has been a castle there. And there has been a keep here. This is a keep where you go when the fight needs a little pause, you need to eat and drink. You go in the keep, and then after the pause, you go back and fight. So this gave me a kind of assurance that my feeling for the site, for the genius loci of the site, if you like, was right. Next. So we started to do a castle and a big castle because the community had said that we couldn't use the whole land, but only this. So we started like this, and then I got commissioned, and when they asked the politicians why they choose me, they said, because the plan was so ridiculous that we thought we wanted. Okay, next. And then we split the castle in more different things, so we spread the buildings over the whole site. And then my idea was, of course, these castles should be high. 8 floors, maybe 10 even, so that you could overlook the whole site and overlook the river. But the developer said, no, no, no. We don't sell apartments here in the south of Holland. We sell ground-bound houses with a little garden or with a courtyard, but 10% apartments and not more. So we were stuck. Next. And then I proposed to do the next. I proposed in this proposal with the developers, I brought some little tarts and I put a piece of green on the table and a big one for the village and I put them in order. I said, okay, these will be our castles. And during this meeting, we ate all the pastry. And at the end of the meeting, I could complete that it was a consumerist product that we had made. And so we agreed to go on forward with that. Next. And so here you see how we have this in a kind of order, and later we introduced the landscape more. Next. Next. Here you see the landscape. We expanded the wood area, and we did different landscapes, and the castles were later positions in this landscape. Next. And here you see the first model that I made to show how the interaction of the different landscapes and the different forms of castle could work, and what the distance between the castles would be. And the density of the castles, let's say this would be a castle of 100 by 100 meter, exactly a hectare, and it would have the double density of Phoenix, so it would be 60 or 70. And this would be a little bit bigger, and it's, well, okay. This is what we did, and this model was stolen from an exposition, so I don't have it anymore. I only have this picture. Next. And then the builders said to me, yeah, we are worried because we sell a special type of house in this part of the land so easily, and it is the semi-attached. So we lose now the semi-attached. I said to them, no, I will make a castle for you, especially of semi-detached housing. And so here you see the first model of the semi-detached houses, 2 houses with gardens in between, which are circling around, and then you have towers at the corners that only have 1 apartment, so you have double possibility of balconies. And here you have row houses, which are the cheapest. And then under these row houses, which are lifted 1 floor so that they overlook the gardens and have a view on the outside, under this is the parking. 2 places per house. So too much, really. Next. And here you see the complete plan, and at the moment we are busy finishing the plan for these 2 castles that were stopped because of the crisis, but now we will make them. And I gave commission to different architects. This is Adolfo Natalini from Florence, Italy. This is, I don't remember. This is Jo Crepin from Belgium. This is Michael Graves from US. So my friends and family, let's say I gave commissions to do each castle. And every castle should be very articulate and different from all the others. And I had worked with Natalini and Michael Graves in The Hague, so we knew each other, and they said, the Dutch cannot make a proper castle. I mean, we need foreigners, postmodernists to do this. And Rob Creer made the plan for this, what is that, slot. Next. And here you see my landscape architect and me in a presentation for the population to explain them how the project would work. Next. And here you see an image of the total. Next. Next. And these are early pictures because the green, the tree structures have grown immensely. And so if you're now on the golf course, there's a golf course, you see these buildings hidden behind the green and the trees. Next. This is Natalini. Next. This is, Lucien Lafour, Dutch architect. Next. This is my friend Jo Crépin from Belgium. Next.
It's a bicycle this way, or bicycle.
Yeah. Next. This is Michael Graves. Next. And this is Viennese architect. I forget it. I don't like it so much. This is Rob Krier. Next. Rob Krier. And this is a model of my castle. You see the mirror I used to show that it's completely symmetrical. Next. This is the castle as a model. And you see you have a courtyard or forecourt where you can go around with your car. If you don't belong there, you have a bridge, there you have a gate out, and then you go with the car under this courtyard, or you go to your houses in the periphery. Next. Plan. Next. System. Houses. Higher. Next. Next. And here it is like it is. Next. And I just said, there are people who live there, the women who live there, they write poetry on it. Pleasant places, happy people. Thank you. Next. Next. Lee swans playing in the courtyard. Little trees. Okay, and we are doing now this. We try new models here. Next. We go quickly through it. And the inspiration is this little village and a castle in France. Next. 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 So we're looking for making a village here and making a castle in the bend of the river. And in the meantime, this has changed immensely. Next. Next. So this is what we are doing at the moment. Next. Next. And a square castle here, with on the corner a higher building, but the rest is ground bound. Okay, next. Finished. Finish. Finish. Okay, model. Next. 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 Yeah. This is it. Thank you so much.